Hey all, welcome to the first episode of Custom Card Reviews for 2025 and the 11th overall. In today's episode we got Psychic Hackers, a rendition of Kanye West's How Could You Be So Heartless, and a second attempt to support Felgrand. Submissions still currently closed except to patrons and YouTube members, but I welcome everyone to check out the Discord server with the link in the description for a custom card community, as well as all things Yu-Gi-Oh! Now let's dive in. This first submission is by Hero, a patron of the channel. You may remember him from one of the first episodes with the Katamari archetype. Well, he is back with the Paracyphers. I'll read some of the context that he provided here. The Paracypher theme is based on ciphers, a type of algorithm designed to encrypt or decrypt codes of data, and parapsychology, the study of psychic phenomena such as sixth sense, telepathy, precognition, and clairvoyance. It's a deck revolving around a bunch of level 3 psychic monsters, so let us see what we have to work with here. Starting off with Paracypher Mono, cannot be special summoned from the deck, so there goes all your emergency teleport abuse. If your hand is revealed, you can special summon this card from your hand. You can only special summon Paracypher Mono once per turn this way. You cannot activate the effects of monsters on the field except psychic monsters to turn you normal or special summon this card. You must keep your hand revealed. So this first half of effects shown here are going to be shared among all the main deck monsters, so just keep that in mind. I'm not going to repeat them as we go through each one of them. So the unique effects, you can show one card from your hand, add one Paracypher card from your deck to your hand of the same card type, monster, spell, or trap. If your hand is revealed, you can place this card from your graveyard to the top of your deck, special summon one level 3 psychic monster from your grave. You can only use each effect of mono once per turn. Next up is Paracypher Poly, cannot be special summoned, so again, top half all the same as the previous monster. You can banish one Paracypher card from your extra deck, activate cards from the top of your deck equal to that card's level or rank, send any number of activated cards, Paracypher cards to the grave, place the rest on top of your deck in any order. If this card is sent to the grave, you can banish this card, add one Paracypher card from your grave to your hand. You can only use each effect of Poly once per turn. Next up, we have Paracypher Ophon. Cannot be... Okay, I keep starting there. Same effects on the top half. Unique effect, if this card is normal or special summon, you can set one Paracypher spell from your deck. If this card is sent from your deck to the grave, you can special summon it and banish it when it leaves the field. You can only use each effect of Ophon once per turn. And then we have Affine. Unique effects, if this card is normal or special summon, you can banish one Paracypher card from your deck. You can banish one other Paracypher card from your grave, add this card from your graveyard to your hand. You can only use each effect of Paracypher Affine once per turn. And then, backward. And then we get into the extra deck, starting off with Paracypher Caesar. So we're going to have a Pendulum Synchro, level 6. Pendulum effect, both players must keep their hands revealed. If a Paracypher monster is succeed summoned, you can special summon this card from your Pendulum Zone. And it is a scale of 2. The materials, so the monster going to the monster effects, the materials are a Paracypher Tuner plus one non-tuner psychic monster. You can only special summon one Paracypher Caesar per turn. Both players must keep their hands revealed. If this card is synchro summoned, you can set one Paracypher spell or trap from your deck. You can banish one psychic monster you control, special summon one psychic monster from your hand, grave, or banishment. If this card in the monster zone leaves the field, you can place this card in your Pendulum Zone. You can only use each effect of the Caesar once per turn. Now we have the Paracypher Playfair, so this is the Xyz Pendulum. Its scale is 4, so that allows you to access all the Pendulum Summon, all the variety of level 3s that you have here. So this is a rank 3 Pendulum effect. If a Paracypher monster is synchro summoned, you can special summon this card from your Pendulum Zone, and if you do, attach up to 3 Paracypher monsters from your grave and or banishment to this card as material. As far as the mantra effects, the materials are 2 or more level 3 psychic monsters. You can only special summon one Paracypher Playfair per turn. If this card is Xyz summon, you can add one Paracypher card from your banishment to your hand. If your hand is revealed, quick effect, you can attach up to 3 materials from this card and target cards on the field equal to the number of cards attached, banish those cards. If this card in the monster zone leaves the field, you can place this card in your Pendulum Zone. You can only use each effect of Paracypher Playfair once per turn. And then we get into the spell, starting off with the field spell, Paracypher Algorithmic Scape. When this card is activated, you can add one Paracypher monster from your deck to your hand. You can only use this effect of the Algorithmic Scape once per turn. You must keep your hand revealed. Paracypher monsters you control gain 300 attack for each different type of card revealed in both players' hands. Monster spell and trap, so that would give you a max of, I believe, 900 for your monsters, Paracypher monsters. Alright, now we get into Paracypher Encryption, a continuous spell. Both players must keep the card on the top of their deck revealed. If the revealed card on top of your deck is a Paracypher card, your opponent cannot activate cards or effects in response to the activation of Paracypher cards and effects. If a Paracypher card is revealed in your hand, you can draw one card and place one Paracypher card from your hand to the top of your deck. During the end phase of your turn, you can place one card from your banishment to the top of your deck. You can only use each effect of Paracypher Encryption once per turn. And now for the final spell, we have Paracypher Extraction. A normal spell, discard 1 card, should be a semicolon. Send 1 Paracypher monster from your deck to your grave. And if your hand is revealed, you can also send 1 level 3 psychic monster to the grave as well. Also, for the rest of the turn, you cannot special summon monsters from your hand, deck, or grave except for level 3 psychic monsters. If this card is banished, you can add this card from your banishment to your hand. You can only use each effect of the extraction once per turn. And the final card is the Trap Paracypher Formation. When a spell, trap card, or monster effect is activated while your hand is revealed, banish 1 Paracypher monster you control. Negate the activation. Then, if a Paracypher card is revealed in your hand, you can banish that negated card. You can only activate Paracypher Formation per 1 Paracypher Formation per turn. That one got cut off. Alright, so that does it for the cards. Let's jump back up to the top. So just some general feedback real quick. Basically, every card here reveals your hand, which makes the condition of a card being revealed to access an effect incredibly easy to achieve. I would recommend that for at least the main deck monsters, instead of giving them the full hand reveal effect, you incorporate revealing a card as part of another effect that the card has, and then that card stays revealed until the end of the turn, allowing you to leverage it for other reveal-based effects. So for example, with mono, you have one effect here that already kind of does that, except instead of saying show 1 card from your hand, because if your hand is revealed, that's why you use the term show, you would instead say you can reveal 1 card from your hand, or maybe the right terminology is still show in case your hand is already revealed. Either way, reveal it until the end of the turn. Add 1 Paracypher card from your deck to your hand of the same card type, monster, spell, or trap. So something like that, maybe just to be able to establish your combo step by step, as opposed to just getting that full reveal that allows you to access all the effects in one go. The other thing I'll say is that it looks like every card has a +1 attached to it, whether that be a search from the deck or from the grave or banishment. I still don't think this is the best design practice, because it's how we end up with any 1 card leading to the same end board, the infamous 1 card combo. But I digress. If this is meant to be as competitive as possible, it's probably fine. I still don't think every card in competitive archetypes has a +1 associated to it. At least not every archetype does that. Maybe I'm just behind the times. But just a general piece of feedback there. All right, so on to mono. So basically what I've said about the general feedback applying here. Otherwise, I think this card is fine. The other one thing maybe I would recommend here, you can place this card from your grave to the top of the deck. That's worded as a cost. I would probably make that as part of the effect. The poly is solid, no issues here. The Ophon, I would, for the search effect, so it says you can set 1 Paracypher spell directly from your deck. Now, I get that that's all the rage nowadays, both with custom card creators and Konami, as a means of power creeping over things like Ash Blossom. Since you already have a synchro that sets a spell or trap directly from your deck, I would distinguish the power level of these cards a bit further by making this one a search. So since this is an easily summonable card, it gets the add a card, and then the synchro, since it takes a bit more of a resource to bring that out, that gets the direct set from the deck. All right, the Affine, no problems here. Caesar, I would, for the monster effect, maybe consider with the you can banish 1 psychic monster you control, special summon 1 psychic monster from your hand, grave, or banishment. I would probably put in there accept a card with the same name as the banished monster. Maybe you wanted that the ability to just get the one that you banish. I don't know how much you can really abuse with that without really playtesting the deck, but generally speaking, with effects like this, you tend to see accept the monster that was banished by this effect at the very least, and then on a more stringent level, any monster with the same name as the one that was banished. Otherwise, I think the synchro is pretty good. Going on to Playfair. So the Playfair is, he doesn't play fair, right? But for real. So relative to your Konami archetype, this is much more balanced and has the targeting on banish. So this is all CCG approved. Only thing I'd say here for the pendulum effect, that it shouldn't grab 3. Make the triple banish doable when you properly exceed summon it. And then when you bring it out via its pendulum effect, you get 1. So you get that 1 extra banish every time you bring it out via its pendulum effect. Maybe meet me halfway there at 2. I still say I would recommend 1, but it definitely shouldn't be 3, just because that should be reserved for actually properly bringing it out. Now on to the rest of the spells and traps. So the field spell I think is really good. Solid work here. The encryption. So this is the one card that stuck out to me as a problem child. So this is one of those effect combinations that I like to see broken out among multiple cards. So you have to assemble them all to pull off the combo. But this card just does it all. It reveals the top card of the deck, grants you the protection against negation, and allows you to, with 2 different effects, to put a card on top of your deck. So for me, typically I like to see this broken out in multiple cards, like I said, but with this card in particular and with the effect that you're going for, I think the more appropriate solution for this card is to water down that second effect. So right now you're making all your Paracypher cards and effects spell speed 4s anytime the top card of your deck is a Paracypher card. This is too powerful of a floodgate. It just basically says your opponent can't interact with you. So I think that's too powerful. I would water it down in some sort of fashion, whether that be it's a temporary effect like the turn that it was activated, or maybe if a Paracypher card was placed on top of your deck and is revealed during this turn, then you get that negation against negation effect, but just some sort of way to water it down, because otherwise I think it's too powerful as it is. Moving on into the formation. Extraction was good. Formation, the one thing I say is this kind of reads like a counter trap, so I wonder if it was meant to be a counter trap. Otherwise, I think this is a solid card. Moving on to the grading for the design, I give it a 7. Like your Konami archetype, this is a very smooth operation. One of the things I will say is that, at least with the first 3 monsters in particular, they have a lot of text on them, somehow more than the pendulums. I think the concept of the deck overall, though, is very interesting. Maybe you could leverage the revealed aspects some more like you do with encryption and formation. And then the main hesitation that I have with the deck, though, is I kind of get the feeling that this is just one giant engine to an end board, where all the different cards are just comboing into until you finally get to where you want to get to, which a lot of decks do work that way, but they also still function pretty well when they are interrupted or have to deal with a grind game. I wonder how well, can't really say without playtesting too much, but I wonder how well this deck will do in a grind game when you're just left with a board of like a monster and maybe you have one of your back row going for you as well. For the creativity, I give a 7. It's a nice concept, great artwork, some redundancy on effects, like how all the monsters have the reveal effect and the search, the special summon from hand effect, and then almost all cards have a search effect. But overall, great blend of the Cypher and parapsychology lore. And then for the balance, I give it a 7 as well. I think the main problem card here is encryption, so definitely take a second look at that. Only other thing is what I mentioned at the top, where maybe instead of every card giving you a mass reveal of your hand to access all the effects, some only reveal 1 card at a time, so it makes you work to access the next effect in your combo. But overall, a big improvement compared to the Konami archetype, which I believe was like a 3 or 4 on the balance. So well done here with straight 7s. That's a jackpot 7. Thank you, Hero, for your submission and for your support of the channel. This submission is by Dataluke, another patron of the channel, and another name you may recall from an earlier episode where he did the Keyblade Masters. This is a continuation of the greater Kingdom Hearts archetype of Iz, with a focus now on the Heartless archetype. So here we go, starting off with Shadow Heartless, a level 3 Dark Fiend. If an opponent's monster declares an attack, you can discard this card, negate the attack, and if you do, destroy that monster. Quick effect, if this card was sent to the grave this turn, you can special summon up to 2 Shadow Heartless from your hand or deck. And while this card is face up on the field, all monsters your opponent controls become dark. Next is Wizard Heartless, a level 4 dark spellcaster, 1900 attack. Dark monsters your opponent controls lose attack equal to the number of dark monsters on the field times 200. During your main phase, you can discard this card, add either 1 Heartless monster or 1 darkness spell card from your deck to your hand. You can only use this effect of Wizard Heartless once per turn. Next up is Red Nocturne Heartless, a level 2 dark spellcaster, also a tuner. Once per turn, when this card is normal or special summon, you can discard 1 card, special summon 1 Keyblade Warrior monster from your hand or deck, but it cannot attack or activate its effects this turn. If this card is used for the synchro summon of a Heartless monster, you can use monsters in your hand as material. Next up, we have Large Body Heartless, a level 4 Dark Fiend. Can be special summoned from your hand or grave if your opponent controls a dark monster. If your opponent controls a dark monster, quick effect, you can add 1 Heartless monster from your deck or grave to your hand. You can only use 1 effect of Large Body Heartless per turn and only once that turn. This card cannot be destroyed by battle while in defense position. While this card is face up on the field, all monsters your opponent controls become dark. And then we have Air Soldier Heartless, a level 3 Dark Fiend. When this card is normal or special summon, you can special summon 1 level 3 or lower Heartless monster from your deck except Air Soldier Heartless. If this card is discarded to the grave, you can special summon it but banish it when it leaves the field. You can only use the effects of Air Soldier Heartless once per turn. And then finally for the main deck, we have Heartless Ansem. That's a level, 10? Cannot be normal summon or set, but can only be special summoned from your hand or grave by banishing 3 dark monsters from either side of the field. You can only control 1 Heartless Ansem. During your main phase, if you control no Guardian Heartless tokens, special summon 1 Guardian Heartless token. A Fiend Dark level 6 attack, 1300, defense 1300 to your field. While this card is face up on the field, your opponent's dark monsters cannot activate their effects, and level 5 or lower dark monsters you control can attack directly. Once per turn, if this card would leave the field, you contribute 1 dark monster you control instead. I lied, there was one more main deck monster, which is a Ritual Darkness Possessed Riku, a level 6 ritual. You can only ritual summon this card with the effect of Way to Dawn Keyblade. Once per turn during your main phase, you can discard 1 card, special summon 1 Heartless monster from your deck or grave. If this card is destroyed and sent to the grave, you can special summon 1 Heartless and summon from your hand, deck, or grave, ignoring its summoning conditions. During your main phase, you can discard this card from your hand, add 1 Keyblade spell card from your deck or grave to your hand. You can only use the effect of Darkness Possessed Riku once per turn. Went backward. Now we get into the extra deck, Heartless Dark Side, a level 6 fusion. Materials 3 dark monsters, which is contact fused by sending those that you control to the grave, not using polymerization. When this card is successfully special summoned, you can target 1 monster your opponent controls, banish it until the end phase. All dark monsters you control gain 800 attack and defense, putting this guy at 3300 and 2600. Once per turn, you can get the activation and effect of 1 spell or trap card your opponent controls and destroy it. Now we have the Synchro Heartless Demon Tide. That is a level 8. A materials of 1 Heartless Tuner plus 1 or more non-tuner monsters. This card cannot be targeted by your opponent's card effects. This card gains attack equal to the number of non-tuner materials used for its summon times 1000. If dark monsters your opponent controls activate their effects are negated and their attack and defense become 0. If this card is destroyed and sent to the grave, you can special summon as many level 3 or lower Heartless monsters from your grave as possible. You can only use this effect of a Heartless Demon Tide once per turn. Now we get into the spells. Realm of Darkness, the field spell. While this card is face up on the field, all monsters your opponent controls become dark. All Heartless monsters you control gain 300 attack. If the effect of a Heartless monster you control would be negated by your opponent's card effect, you can discard 1 card instead. If you normal summon or special summon a Keyblade Warrior monster, you can tribute 1 Heartless monster on your side of the field. Destroy 1 card on your opponent's side of the field. If you tribute a monster special summon from the extra deck for this effect, you can banish 1 random card from your opponent's hand instead. You can only activate each effect of Realm of Darkness once per turn. So that does it for the cards. Let's jump back up to the top. So starting off with Shadow Heartless, the hand effect is I think it's a bit overpowered. Either add an extra condition to it, like if they attack an archetypal monster, or instead of destroying it, maybe just switch it to defense position. We don't have an effect like this. The hand traps that do deal with battle phase, you think of things like Battle Fade or Swift Scarecrow, they special summon themselves or discard themselves and they end the battle phase, but nothing really destroys on attack declaration. Not saying that it's not something Konami would probably do eventually, but I think there would be a bit more condition attached to it. The second effect is a really powerful extender. So anytime, any way it's sent to the grave, and then it just gives you at any point during that turn, you can spawn 2 more Shadow Heartless from your hand or deck. I think that might be a bit much. I would maybe just restrict it to 1 Shadow Heartless and then put a hard once per turn on that effect, so you can't go through all 3. That's just my opinion on that. The Wizard Heartless, I like how the first effect works in tandem with the previous monster's effect to turn your opponent's monsters dark, so that's a nice little interaction there. The second effect, so there are a lot of darkness spells out there, like spells that have darkness in its name, and maybe you were fine with all the ones that exist out there, like Allure of Darkness and Lair of Darkness. Maybe you wanted to loop those in anyway. Just something to keep in mind, though, when you use those generic words to name an archetype, it might just come back to bite you. Like, for example, if Konami tomorrow drops the actual darkness archetype from, like, Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, then this might become a bit of a problem search effect for either one of the archetypes, either yours or the darkness archetype. The Red Nocturne Heartless. So you don't need the once per turn here. Anytime you have an effect that is when this card is summoned, the once per turn doesn't really matter because that resets anytime the monster leaves the field. So maybe what you're looking for is the hard once per turn, which would be like you can only use the effect of Red Nocturne Heartless once per turn. Moving on into the Large Body Heartless. So the first effect reads like a non-activated effect. You need to say here that Large Body you can only special summon Large Body Heartless once per turn this way. But since you're applying that hard once per turn to both effects, like you have here, you can only use 1 effect of Large Body Heartless per turn and 1 once that turn. Maybe you could just change the first effect to an activated effect. So just have the condition, if your opponent controls a dark monster, you can special summon this card from your hand or grave, and then it would flow into that hard once per turn stipulation. I think the search effect here is very powerful since you get it on your and your opponent's turn, so either at a cost or make it only work on one of the turns. Alternatively, the existing condition would also be fine if he himself didn't also turn your opponent's monsters dark. So you get his effect if your opponent happens to control a dark monster, or if you have one of your other effects that turn your opponent's monsters dark, and then you could start getting those searches. Either way would be fine. Going into the Air Soldier Heartless, so this guy looks like he only has, unless there's more to your archetype, but he only has 2 targets he can grab, the Red Nocturne or the Shadow Heartless. So it just really depends on how powerful they are, how powerful this effect becomes. Red Nocturne is the question here because this guy brings that out, which can then bring out a Keyblade monster, and that gives you a level 10 or 11 Synchro right off the bat if we go off your previous submission of Riku and Sora. So maybe that could be a bit much. Honestly, it could be just a quick fix where you add a stipulation that you can only summon Heartless monsters or Keyblade monsters for the rest of the turn. Something like that, so you are stuck within your archetype instead of being able to generically splash a rank, or not a rank, a level 10 or 11 Synchro engine. Moving into Ansem. So pretty powerful when you use any of these effects that turn your opponent's monsters dark. You can just mass banish them to summon this guy. If we left it at that, though, I think it'd be fine. But then on top of that, you have the mass block on activating effect. So I think this is just one of those cards I just need to see tested, because I can see it being fine or just incredibly, incredibly annoying because it can mass get rid of your opponent's cards without any chain. It just on summon condition. And then it also mass blocks your opponent's effects, activated monster effects. So that could be somewhat problematic. The protection effect here at the bottom is a bit of an interesting one, but I think you'll need to specify here that it only works if it would leave the field by battle or card effect. I don't think it mechanically works with, say, like if your opponent were distributed off with like a Kaiju or a Lava Golem. I don't think the rules of the game make sense to let you just tribute another dark monster instead to keep him around in those instances. So if you were thinking it would serve as a protection for that, I just don't think the mechanics of the rules would allow that to work. So I would just specify here if it would leave the field by battle or card effect. The Darkness Possessed Riku. So I don't have a look at the Weighted Dawn Keyblade ritual spell. I went back and looked at your previous submission. I don't think it was there either, unless I just missed it. So I can't fully grade this card. Overall, I think it's fine. It seems to be a good bridge between the Keyblade and Darkness sub-archetypes within the greater family of your Kingdom Hearts archetype. So overall, this card is solid. And now going into the extra deck. So Heartless Dark Side. The last effect here, you would just need to reword it as the typical activation for like anything that negates an effect based on activation. So it'd be like once per turn, when your opponent activates a spell trap card, and then in parentheses, quick effect, you can negate the activation of that card, and if you do, destroy it. So something like that. Otherwise, I think this is a good card. And just a note to that point, obviously, I'm not going through and providing too much PSCT recommendations, but do check out the Discord if you're not already on it. There is a channel specifically for PSCT, and a lot of folks there are more than willing to help others out on fine-tuning the PSCT. So that's a call out for not just this creator here, but for anyone watching. If you need help on PSCT, you can always visit that Discord and get some helpful assistance there. Now moving into the final monster, so the Heartless Demon Tide. So this negation effect is really powerful. It kind of reads like a continuous effect, but then I think with that additional aspect of reducing their attack and defense to 0, it's why it becomes a activated effect. I would maybe restrict that, like add the hard ones per turn to that as well, just because otherwise it just keeps going and going, even multiple times in the same chain. So at worst, add a once per chain stipulation on there, because these effects tend to at least be once per chain. The last effect, I would negate the effects of monsters summoned by its effect, or if you clean up Red Nocturne and Air Soldier, then maybe it's fine. Because right now you're getting as many level 3 or lower Heartless monsters from your grave as possible, and then 2 of them can spawn 2 more monsters from your deck. So maybe it becomes a bit too much. So either consider negating their effects, or just fine-tune Red Nocturne and Air Soldier a bit more. And then finally we have Realm of Darkness. The negation of the negation effect, so kind of similar to what we saw with the Paracyphers, but this one, it at least has a cost to it. This doesn't need a colon here. This kind of reads like a continuous effect because it applies when it's like checking for things in the middle of a chain resolution, like is your opponent effect about to negate one of your card effects, then you can just discard a card instead. But then to that end, it would not fall under the hard once per turn stipulation. So then you would have to clarify that this effect can only be applied or used, whatever the terminology is, once per turn. Overall, though, I think this is a great field spell. I think I like a lot of the interactions it has between both the Heartless and Keeley Warrior sub-archetype, so well done on that. So moving on to the grading. For the design, I give it a 7. Few easily abusable effects here, but also kudos to tying together your previous submission into one grand archetype that gives the deck a variety of interactions. The creativity, I give an 8. Like I mentioned in the last edition, my familiar with Kingdom Hearts ends with Kingdom Hearts 2, and that was over a decade ago, but I do get the sense that the lore is captured really well in these cards. And then balance, I give it a 7. Some powerful floodgates here, but also a good use of costs on other cards, so pretty well done overall. And that gives the deck a average score of 7.7. Thank you, Dataluke, for your submission and your continued support of the channel. This submission is by FlameVille. This is support for the Felgrand archetype. You know, if I had a nickel for every time someone submitted support for Felgrand, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice. All right, means aside, let's just get into this. And a side note, there were no card images submitted here, so we'll be working off the Dueling Book deck list, starting off with Divine Dragon Whelp. Felgrand is a level 3 Dragon Light Tuner. This card gains 5 levels during your opponent's turn only. Once per turn, you contribute 1 dragon monster you control. Send 1 level 7 or 8 light dragon monster from your deck or hand to the grave. If this card is sent from the field to the grave, special summon 1 level 7 or 8 light dragon monster from your grave. Next up is the Seraphine Light Weaver of Felgrand. It's a level 4 light spellcaster. Once per turn, if this card is summoned, add 1 card that mentions Felgrand from your deck to your hand. If this card is in your graveyard, you can banish this card, special summon 1 Felgrand token, dragon level 2 to your side of the field. You can only use each effect of this card once per turn. Next up is the Lyran Priest of Felgrand, a level 2 spellcaster tuner. You can discard this card, add 1 Return of the Dragon Lords from your deck to your hand. If you control a Felgrand monster, you can special summon this card from your graveyard, banish it when it leaves the field. You can only use each effect of this card once per turn. Next, we have Rhea Hound of Felgrand. You can special summon this card from your hand if there is a face-up Felgrand monster on the field. Once per turn, you can discard 1 monster card from your hand, special summon 1 Felgrand token, Dragon Light level 1, attack 0, defense 0 for every 2 levels of the monster discarded. If this card is sent from the field to the grave, target 1 level 4 or lower Felgrand monster in your grave, return it to your hand. Now we jump to the Spirit of Felgrand. This is a level 7 light dragon. If you control a Felgrand monster while your opponent controls a monster, you can special summon this card from your hand. Your opponent cannot target other Felgrand monsters you control with card effects or attacks except this card. If this card is attacked while you control another Felgrand monster, you can return this card to your hand, special summon 1 level 7 or 8 monster from your grave and switch the target to that card. The special summon monster gains 800 attack. Now we jump down to the extra deck monster, starting off with Drakthar Fury of Felgrand. This is a level 8 synchro light dragon, comprised of a Felgrand tuner monster plus 1 or more non-tuner monsters. When this card is synchro summoned, banish all face-down cards your opponent currently controls. This card can attack all monsters your opponent controls. Quick effect, once per turn, when your opponent activates a spell trap card, you can banish 1 monster from your hand to negate the activation and banish that card. Then we have another synchro, Dullahan Sword Saint of Felgrand, a level 9, is that? Light Warrior synchro monster. Materials are Divine Dragon Whelp Felgrand plus 1 non-tuner or one or more non-tuner monsters. When this card is synchro summoned, you can target cards up to the number of non-tuner monsters used for this card synchro summon. Banish them face down. This card gains 300 attack for each card banished by this effect. This card gains an attack for each non-tuner used for its synchro summon. And then finally, we have the Exalted Felgrand. This is a rank 8 light dragon comprised of 3 level 8 light monsters. If this card has Divine Dragon Lord Felgrand or Felgrand Dragon as materials, it is unaffected by card effects. When this card is Exceed Summon, you can target 3 cards on the field, banish them face down. This card gains attack and defense equal to the level/rank times 200 of monsters banished by this effect. If this card in its owner's control leaves the field by your opponent, special summon 1 level 7 or the 8 light dragon monster that is either banished or in your grave. Now let's come to the spells and traps. We got 1 spell, 1 trap. The spell is the Field Aldrath Land of Felgrand. When this card is activated, add 1 Felgrand card from deck to your hand. Once per turn, you can discard 1 monster from your hand, add 1 level 7 or 8 light dragon monster from your deck to your hand, or send it to the grave. During the battle phase, if a Felgrand monster you control battles an opponent's monster, your opponent cannot activate effects during the battle phase. If this card is sent from the field to the grave, target 1 Felgrand monster in your grave, special summon it. And then finally, we have the trap. Citadel of Felgrand. Continuous trap. Must discard a light monster from your hand in order to activate this card. During either main phase, you can make the level of a light monster you control level 8 for the rest of the turn. The effect of Felgrand monsters you control cannot be negated. During the end phase, you can discard a card, target 3 Felgrand cards in your grave, return those targets to your deck. You can only activate each effect of this card once per turn. Alright, starting from the top with some general feedback. So like I mentioned with the previous submission, feel free to check out the Discord server. You can find the link to that in the description of this video, where you can discuss all things custom cards, and there's a specific channel for PSCT help, so helping you figure out what is the best way to word things, and then also including all the different punctuations that can impact how the effects are read. So definitely a good resource for fine-tuning the text of your custom cards. Now we can get into the specific cards, starting off with the Divine Dragon Whelp Felgrand. I feel like those second 2 effects should fall under you can only activate 1 of these effects per turn, and only once that turn, kind of like the Blackstone of Legend, just so it doesn't end up getting abused by other light dragons. But maybe if you specify Felgrand dragon monsters, then you can avoid that. The level bump, is there a reason for the level bump? Because this card that does exist, the Dragon Knight of Creation, also has that level bump. But maybe I'm just missing something in like existing support, but I don't really see the benefit of it, which opens up the possibility that you could create some effects that allow you to synchro or exceed summon on your opponent's turn, and that would help you take advantage of not only this card but the Dragon Knight of Creation, so that they both become level 8s on your opponent's turn, and you can go into your exceeds or synchro or what have you to really leverage the full scope of the cards that you've designed. Going into the Seraphine. So with the Seraphine, on summon effects, don't, like I mentioned with the another submission, don't need the once per turn clause, because those effects, they reset when a monster leaves the field. What you're looking for is the hard once per turn clause, but you already have that, so you can just delete the phrase once per turn and you'll be fine here. As for the mentions Felgrand, so I'll get on my soapbox with this again. You can't reference words. The word mention, anything that comes after that is going to have to be a specific card name or a class of monster, being Spirit, Gemini, Union, etc. So there's no examples that Konami has created where it's just a word like Felgrand or Dark or something like that. But in your case, you'll be fine just saying add 1 Felgrand card. So it doesn't need to say mentions Felgrand. You can just say 1 Felgrand card, because I think all the cards that you've designed have Felgrand in their name. And then I don't think there's any existing card out there that has the word Felgrand in its text but doesn't have it in its name. So you might just be fine saying search or add 1 Felgrand card from deck to hand, because that'll encompass all the cards you've designed. And finally, for the token creation, you did it for another card, but for here you need to specify the attribute, attack, and defense of that token. Going into the Lyran, card names, just keep them in quotation marks, and then just general PSCT fixing, but otherwise this card is fine, as is the Hound. I think this is a solid card. The Spirit of Felgrand, also a solid, really solid. I really like this card for the deck. It's kind of like you already have a Jet Dragon here, but it's kind of like the Jet Dragon for Felgrands, and I think it works well for the archetype. Going down into the extra deck, so the Drakthar, I would specify here how many tuners you need. You just says Felgrand tuner, probably 1, but just specify it here. The attack all monsters effect should say can attack all monsters your opponent controls once each, so you don't just have this infinite loop. If your opponent has a monster that can't be destroyed by battle, you just keep attacking it over and over. Moving into the Dullahan, assuming you meant cards on the field here as far as what it can banish, but maybe you meant graveyard as well, so just specify here what you meant by that. Otherwise, this is good to go. And then finally, the Xyz monster. The unaffected by card effects should specify except its own, because if it's unaffected by card effects, it won't get this boost to the attack and defense by its own effect. And I've talked about before how unaffected by card effects is something that shouldn't just be willy-nilly tossed around. I think with your specification that it needs to have a specific material makes it fine. So overall, I'm fine with that. The other thing I'll say about this is The bosses overall I think are good. It's just that they all kind of do the same thing. They all just mass bench in some sort of fashion, which is fine if you want to keep that to the theme of it. But it is also just an opportunity to vary up what your bosses can do by giving them different effects. And then now let's go up to the field spell. So the field spell, not a fan of 2 search effects on 1 card, but since the use cases here aren't too varied, I think it's probably fine. We'll say though that you should stick a hard once per turn on the first effect, so you can't just keep searching it with itself and then activating it and then searching another copy, or at least say that you can't search a copy of Aldrath Land of Felgrand with that first search effect. The other thing I'll say about this is the can't activate effects during the battle phase. It should probably say until the end of the damage step. So if a Felgrand monster you control battles an opponent's monster, your opponent cannot activate effects until the end of the damage step, and you would be fine. That's what I think you're going for. And then finally, the Citadel. So the negation protection against Felgrand monsters needs, I think, a more strict condition. So this is, I think, 3 for 3 on submissions here, where we have some sort of effect that helps your effects go on unimpeded. So like the second one, I think, was the sweet spot, where you have like a specific condition and you have a cost to it, and it doesn't always apply. With this one, just mass applying it to all your Felgrand monsters that you control, I think this is a bit too much. Maybe it only works during the turn that it's activated, or maybe there's just some sort of cost associated to it, just so that it's not like a mass floodgate preventing your opponent from interacting with your cards, because that kind of defeats the purpose of the game, where you get a bunch of essentially spell speed 4s and your opponent can't do anything about it. All right, so on to the grading. For the design, I give it a 6. Overall solid effects to turn Felgrand into an archetype, but just feels like there's more to build on here. Like I mentioned with the point on the level modulation, you could have some more effects, a variety of effects here. Just be careful about creating unintended support for the more generic Blight Dragon set of monsters. That's a pretty well robust and well supported set of monsters, Light Dragons, so just be careful about creating unintended support for that. Creativity, I give a 5. I think you've done a good job of making Felgrand a cohesive archetype with good search, power, and strong bosses, but it just feels like it lacks an identity distinct from the typical me dragon, me strong. So that is to say, it works. It could just do something more unique. And then for the balance, I give it an 8. No real problems here other than what I mentioned about the Citadel. So with a 6.58, that's an average score of 6.3. Thank you, FlameVille, for your submission.